Good evening and welcome to DTV, Knoxville's television program for Democrats and by Democrats. It is Friday, September 8th, 2017, a beautiful, beautiful late summer day and evening. It's going to be a beautiful weekend. We had a great football game this past Monday in Atlanta, Georgia, and we're going to have a great season. But tonight we are here to talk about a different kind of contest, and that is the city council races coming up and the city council activities for the city of Knoxville. And we are honored to have with us Councilman Finbarr Saunders. We are honored to have Councilman and former Mayor Dan Brown.
Good evening.
And we are honored to have Assistant Knox County Election Commissioner and Commission Administrator Chris Davis.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
We're glad to have everyone here, and we're going to start out with the news of the week. The news of the week, for the first time, I guess, in history of Knoxville, city of Knoxville, in our elections, we actually had a tie, and the city council had to vote to select one of the candidates to move on to the runoff. We had a tie between former State Representative Harry Tindall and local attorney Amy Parker. And so, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Councilman, tell us, this was, I heard one of you say that this was one of your most difficult votes you've ever made. So tell us a little bit about what went into making this decision and what happened.
It was a hard decision because you had the voters who had already voted one way or another for each one of those candidates. So it came the duty of council to break that tie by either a coin toss or voting, as we voted to do, or either have some type of a special election, which we could not do, on the advice of the administrator of elections, as well as our council attorney, that the time factor would not allow having a special election in terms of the early voting, as well as sending out ballots to people who are in the military overseas. And we discussed a little bit about a coin toss, but that was decided not to do, and so we had to vote. And we had a huge crowd there that night, and as I say, it was a hard choice because you really denying, well, I don't want to use the word denying, but someone will not be happy in that way of choosing something. But that was our duty, and we had to do it.
Yeah, just to go a tiny bit further than Mayor Brown just went, it was a vote that we had to take by the state law. And the vote was not to support one or the other, it was simply to break the tie. So that vote does not indicate an endorsement by council of anybody except to break the tie. That's all it was.
And the result was that former State Representative Harry Tindall received a 9-0 vote to move on to the runoff and run citywide. And so now, under the provisions of the city charter, the way it works is that everything starts clean. Everyone has zero votes right now, and the next election, the runoff, will be when, Mr. Assistant Administrator?
Our city regular election, and of course normally we'd say city general, but the charter calls it regular, so it's the city regular election will be November the 7th. Early voting will begin in Knoxville Wednesday, October 18th, and actually we'll start voting in nursing homes October 16th, and we'll mail out ballots to the military beginning 2 weeks actually from today, September 22nd.
Wow, so that's on us, and now this is a bit of a change from previous times when we moved the primary, yes, or the first round of voting up.
That's correct. We went to, my boss, the Administrator of Elections, Cliff Rogers, went to the City Council actually a couple of years ago following the 2015 election and seeing the fact that we literally had a 5-week window from election day to election day that really forced us to compress a lot of things that were hard to fit in the first place, and then actually get a waiver on one thing from the state, and most things you can't waive, they're set in state law. But we saw that and we thought we don't want to do that again, so we asked if we could put that on the ballot, blessing the City Council. and then put it on the ballot to move it back from the last Tuesday in September to the last Tuesday in August, which obviously we just had, which just gives us more time to do the statutory things that we need to do to conduct the election in the proper manner.
Well, and also it gives the candidates more time to communicate with the voters and gives the voters more time to assess who the candidates are, because the Knoxville system of electing members of city council is different probably than any other system in the entire country. I don't know of any other system in any other city in the entire country that has where the top 2 vote getters in a district then run citywide.
Yeah. Chris might be able to address how that might compare to other parts of the country, but I personally think it's a good system where the second vote, where you are able to vote for one candidate in each district, in this case 5 districts, they don't just represent their district, they are accountable to the entire city. And so I like what I think is the philosophy behind that.
And, well, that's certainly one philosophy. Let's talk, and Councilman Saunders represents the entire city as a councilman at large. Councilman Brown represents a specific district. I think that's District 1?
District 6.
District 6, excuse me. And so District 6, the top 2 vote getters from District 6, and I guess that's Gwen McKenzie
Yes.
and Miss Montgomery.
That's right.
What's Miss Montgomery's first name?
Jennifer.
Jennifer Montgomery. Those 2 top vote getters will now run citywide.
Right.
So how do you feel about that,
Well,
Councilman?
you know, there's been a lot of discussion about that over the years, as you well know, whether or not it should be district-only voting. There's 2 trains of thought on that, but I think the system we have in place is a pretty good system, that because you're going to wind up voting on things that affect the entire city anyway.
Right.
So it's good that the whole city gets to vote on people who are representing a particular district, as well as those people who live in that district. So I think it's a good system. I want to go back and point out, discussing the vote we took the other night. Each one of those candidates had 5 minutes to speak, as well as they had 2 supporters to speak on their behalf. And so I wanted to add that in case
Yes.
people wondering about the process that we use, as well as the administrator of elections, Cliff Rogers, spoke to explain about the election, whether we could have one or not, and also our council attorney, Rob Frost, city council attorney, discussed that. So I wanted to add that to it. But I think that the system we have in place, where you're running it citywide after you've won the district election, allows the whole city to vote. And because you're going to be voting on stuff that affects the whole city anyway.
Yeah,
That's
that's
true.
interesting. Let me follow up on what Mayor Brown just said. You know, a lot of people thought we could just change the system, change the rules midstream, if you will. And we're not able to do that. Our charter calls for certain times of elections, and the election administrator knows this. And we can change it, but only in even years and with the voters' approval, not just city council's approval. So if we consider some changes because of what's happened this time, then that will be addressed in 2018, in the fall of 2018.
Right, it has to go before the city for the
Right.
city charter
Exactly.
amendment.
But of course, the bottom line is we need more voters.
Exactly, and that's a good question. I want to get back to the district thing in first, and then I'll come back to this more voters. But the Councilman Brown, you were one of the, I guess, one of the first and one of the few members of City Council from District 6 who not only won the primary, the first round of voting, but also won citywide.
Right.
For many years, the second place finisher in District 6 would be elected citywide.
Yes, I know that has happened before.
And there was some criticism of that, and so it was good to find that you won in the district itself and then won citywide.
Well, I think that's going to probably be an ongoing discussion amongst local political scientists, and not just local, because as you just said, we're the only city that has that?
I think it's the only one in the entire country. It's the only one I know of, and I have looked. I have done some minimal research on this.
Right. I think it will be an ongoing discussion, and I'm not sure how that would turn out, but it's always good to discuss it. And the more you have discussions on it, I think more people become interested in it, especially younger people. And we certainly need more young people to participate in the political system.
Well, let's talk to the administrator here. Mr. Administrator, Mr. Davis, can people who did not vote in the first round of elections, and we'll call it the primary for lack of a better word, if the people didn't vote in the primary, can they go, and if they're registered to vote, can they go and vote in the runoff?
They not only can vote, I would highly encourage them to vote. Because one of the most frustrating things to the election commission that we see is we got out and we preached, particularly when we saw 30 candidates. That's outstanding. 30 candidates putting their name out there. You gentlemen know better than I do. Running for office is not an easy thing. You're putting yourself out there. We had 30 people put themselves out. And in the district where there was a tie vote, over 15,000 people did not vote. Just in that district, any one of those votes, any one of those 15,000 plus people could have eliminated everything we went through
And
this week.
how many total registered voters are there in the city of Knoxville?
In the city of Knoxville, give or take, there are somewhere in the neighborhood of 75,600, give or take, right now. And well, that's just in the districts that could have voted. You add another 12 to 15 for the 5th district, which obviously could not vote in this most recent primary, and you're approaching 90,000 voters registered.
And we had about 9,000 people, a little over 9,000 people voting.
I actually had about 7,100, 7,140 voted in this election.
So less than 10%?
Right at 9.4, something like that. Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
get out and vote. Get out and get your friends to vote.
Well, and let me add too. We talked for months. We saw the possibility of, if not a tie, certainly a very close election. We just frankly thought it'd be the 6th district, 13 candidates, not a ton of voters. Really didn't anticipate the 4th district. But the bottom line is, we talk to people, and we constantly hear, well, one vote won't make a difference. This is a poster for one vote will make a difference. Your vote makes a difference, particularly in these local races, whether it's this upcoming city regular election or next May when you have your county elections. And I'm not going to opine about sheriff and mayor and all that, but these local elections are where, statistically speaking, your vote is much more significant and can affect the outcome of an election. And that's what this election coming up in November. We provide 15 days of voting. We don't talk about, in the election commission office, we don't talk about election day and early voting. We say we have 15 days of voting, and one of them is election day. We have 14 days of early voting, multiple sites throughout the city. If somebody's over the age of 60 and they can't get out of the home, or maybe they're a caregiver for someone, they can call us. We'll send them an absentee ballot. There are literally very few barriers to voting, and we want people to get out and vote because every vote counts, and I think we've seen that.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that. What are the issues that City Council deals with on a local basis that affects people's lives?
Everything. Everything we do, unlike the federal government or even the state government, which will affect you eventually, we often affect people tomorrow morning. We have an immediate effect with either paving a pothole or not, or paying the police, or making sure we have proper fire and police protection. So the issues we deal with are very immediate to everybody in the city. So we are that first line. We are that government that is closest to the voters. We are the ones that you see in the grocery store, that you see us on the streets, you see us wherever you are in this community, you will see us. And yet there sometimes or appears to be a disconnect, as Chris just said, where 10% of the voters came out. Are you kidding me? And we're the ones that affect you just like that. So it really is baffling to me that there's not more participation. And this election certainly emphasized that. And the city went and did a lot of stuff they've never done before with this Go Vote Knoxville that the mayor participated in. There were 5 meetings, one in each of the districts, prior to the election, to do exactly what we're talking about, to help get the vote out. And I think in some ways it worked very well, and the voter percentage went up. It's still lower than we prefer. So.
Well, we have one issue that will come before us probably in November, issue on short-term rentals. Now, that's gone back to MPC, but the newly elected people may wind up voting on it, I don't know. But that's one issue that a lot of people around the city are going to be, or they already are, very much concerned about the short-term rentals. Also, we have a
That's like Airbnb or
Airbnbs.
HomeAway
Yes,
or
yes, yes,
VRBO.
yes.
Yes,
That's
yes.
most
Yes.
people know it as Airbnb,
Airbnb, yes.
or VRBO, something
Either
like
one
that.
of those terms
When you say
is
short-term
good.
rentals, people wonder.
They may not know what we're talking
Right.
about. So that's a really a major issue.
Yeah.
And we also, the city has hired a consulting firm to look at our zoning laws because they haven't been changed in many, many years. And I'm sure it may come before this council, the present council, including myself, has rotated off, and it may not. It may be up to the next council to vote on that. And those are two major issues
Well,
coming
I
before.
think actually
But
that will come
how
before the next
is the
council.
city of it certainly looks like downtown and the city of Knoxville is growing.
Yes.
Is that accurate? Is
Yes,
that
it
an accurate
is.
statement?
Yes, it is.
And people are moving in here
That's right.
and wanting more services and wanting to know what's going on. You see Nashville just booming like crazy. You see Chattanooga doing great. Memphis is coming on. Bring us up to date on what's happening in Knoxville and
Well-
what's going to happen in the future.
Well, let me say one thing. It has some political ramifications, especially in District 6, which includes downtown.
Right.
So the demographics have changed in District 6. And right now you're having a discussion because I am the only African American on council. The City Council of Knoxville in the last 50 years has only had one African American on the council. Now,
At a time.
at a time. Yes, to make that clear. I think if you talk to Mr. Bob Booker,
You're not that old.
who's a historian, I think that was not the case in the late 1800s. You had 2 or 3 on that there, but that's a pretty big deal because I just say I don't think it would look good for the city of Knoxville to have a council that is not diverse. And I don't know how that can be rectified or solved or changed. I don't know if you're going to have to split the downtown up to several districts. I don't know because so much is happening downtown in terms of housing, and so many people have moved downtown, and so that has a political ramification to it.
It does, and of course there's two sides to that because at one time there was an actual almost a ghetto type where maybe that's the wrong word, but a demarcation of where there was not a diversity of people living in one area or another area.
Right.
Now people have moved out and moved in, and there is a diversity of people, and that's a good thing. That on one hand, that's a good thing. On the other hand, that's like you say, we want to have a diverse city council, and apparently we're going to. We have several women who are on the ballot. I guess in at least one district, I guess that's the first
In the
district.
first district, there's
There's
two women.
two women.
Sixth district
and the
has
sixth-
Sixth
and the
district,
sixth,
there are
yeah.
2 women running. So we're guaranteed to have more women on council because we've only had one woman on council, Brenda Palmer. Is that right?
right now.
Right now.
Yes.
For right now, yeah.
And she's done a great job. We love Brenda Palmer.
Yes.
She's done a great job.
Might add that I believe Ms. Palmer is the first female beer board chairman. Somebody would
believe
have
she
to
is.
check that, but I believe she's the first female to serve as chairman of the beer board and done a great job with that.
Well, so let me get back to the growth part of Knoxville and what do you as members of city council, veteran members of city council, veteran members of the Knoxville community, what do you see as where Knoxville is going?
Well, there are some trends, and I think you're going to see us, council that is, take this up at our next meeting next Tuesday, where we're going to encourage some mixed use districts. In other words, some office retail and residential in what have traditionally been some commercial districts of either C3 or C6. That is on our agenda next week. So we are beginning to massage, and part of this recode that Mayor Brown was talking about deals specifically with that as we go forward. But our codes were written back in the 70s and 80s, and things have changed. When you see the influx of younger people into the center city and into the surrounding, into the city period, and they have different experiences, different wants and needs, and we are trying to accommodate that, not just this year, but 20 years on down the road. And that's so there's doing a lot of demographic looking, not just in this city, but all across the country. And so we're not that unique, but we do need to react to that and make sure that we provide not only the services, but the structure that allows the proper zoning or whatever it is going forward. And that's awkward right now. Let's put it that way.
Well, it's
very awkward.
certainly a challenge, and I think you're
Well, a lot of things have to be done by exception, which means you really need to change the rule if you're doing a lot of stuff by exception. So.
Yes, the growth of downtown, as you know, we're going to have at least two or three new hotels downtown pretty soon.
right.
So it's going to change the face of downtown, in addition to people living downtown in lofts, condominiums, and some apartments. So that is going to really change the face of our downtown.
Well, there's a lot of excitement going on in Knoxville.
I think
Yes,
so.
It's not
There's
just downtown. That density, which is what Mayor Brown's talking about, is being reflected elsewhere in town, like in Bearden or in Fountain City or in South Knoxville. It is going on all over town. And as we begin things like the Magnolia Corridor improvement, that phenomenon, we hope, will take place out there. And so we need to make sure that we are prepared for the growth that's going to occur and that is occurring, and that we don't get caught, unfortunately, like Nashville may have been, and it's confusing and awkward there, and they're having to go back and fix things that they didn't anticipate, and their growth has been very quick. Thank goodness ours is a little more controlled. So
One of the things that's helped in the growth has been the pilots, payments in lieu of taxes, and
the TIFs,
the TIFs.
tax increment
and,
financing.
As you know, because I know you follow this, we now have a third party to look at these TIFs and pilots. And that's a good
Now
thing as well.
TIF is tax increment financing,
Yes,
and
yes.
pilot is not pilot oil,
No,
although we appreciate them being here.
Yes.
But pilot is payments in lieu of taxes.
Right.
And explain that just very quickly.
Well, that's where you're going to pay taxes, but it'd be a deferred payment over a matter of time. It maybe be 10 years, it might be 15 years, it could be 20.
And the purpose of that is to encourage the investment, in areas that have historically not had that investment.
That's right.
So it will bring the revenue of the city and help renew the areas of the city that need it.
Right,
Yeah.
and if I may say, I'm hoping to see that type of thing moving east, because we don't have the private investment necessary to even ask for a TIF or pilot. But hopefully, as we use the Magnolia Streetscape as an example, as begin to move that way, we would encourage people to maybe do something in Burlington.
Well, I think the city council might need to take a stand on that and recommend to Congress that they include parts of East Knoxville and renew the enterprise zone for East Knoxville.
That's a good idea.
This legislation that's going to be coming up in this December with our new president, our good buddy, our good Democratic president now that we have, who has suddenly seen the light and decided to become a Democrat. He is now ready to deal on infrastructure and ready to deal on other things. So maybe we'll get an infrastructure bill coming.
Maybe so.
I do want people to understand, though, when we do a pilot or a TIF, we're not writing a check to anybody. There's no tax dollars going one way or the other, and especially on a TIF. They pay the additional tax, but it goes to public infrastructure, and they take on the debt responsibility instead of the city. So it's a wonderful instrument to help us have private development in the city.
Well said.
Yeah.
Well said. Mr. Administrator, tell us again when the election is.
The city regular election for each of 2 candidates in each of districts 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6 will be on Tuesday, November the 7th. It'll be from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. There'll be polling.
That's the counting day.
That's the actual November 7th is actual election day. That's
When
the
they,
15th day.
when they count the votes. But what election day starts the
Election day,
early.
we actually start voting on October the 18th. We'll actually start nursing home voting on October 16th. And the last day to register to vote, if you live in the city of Knoxville and you are not registered to vote, is October the 9th. That's a Monday, October the 9th coming up.
And is it possible to register to vote and still vote in this upcoming election?
As long as they do so someone does so by October 9th. Mhm.
So this is truly, everybody is starting from scratch. So it
Yes,
makes no difference
absolutely.
how many votes one person got in the primary.
That's right.
Or the other person, you got a
Each-
runoff between
Each
two
of the 2 people in each of the 5 districts right now are on equal footing.
They're
So
on equal
they
footing.
have,
No,
equal,
that's not cumulative, so you don't get
No.
to count the votes that you got on the
Absolutely
first
not.
time and add them to what you get the next time?
That's correct. No, we do not, no.
Well, that's,
Yep.
no, that's a challenge for all the candidates to get out there and talk to those voters.
It will be. Busy few weeks.
It's going to be. And what other issues are coming up with
You
city
know,
council?
I think while we're talking about the election coming up, let's review for just a moment the candidates that are actually going
Good
to be
idea.
on the ballot. And Chris can help me if I forget, but in District 1, you have Rebecca Parr and Stephanie Welsh. In District 2, these were the top 2 vote getters in the primary. In District 2, we have Wayne Christensen and Andrew Roberto. In District 3, James Corcoran and Seema Perez. In District 4, we have actually 3. We have Lauren Ryder, Harry Tyndall, and then as a write-in, Amelia Parker. As I understand
That's
it,
possible,
we
yeah.
don't-
And
we
I
don't-
just
we
want
don't
to
know.
clarify at the time of this show, we've heard rumors
Yeah.
that, and in fact, maybe even a public statement that Ms.
Right.
Parker would write in, hasn't as of yet, but
As
that
of
she
yet.
has until, I believe it's September the 18th at noon to do so.
Right, and then finally, in District 6, Gwen McKenzie and Jennifer Montgomery. So we do have a lot of good people running, and
And let's emphasize that these are good folks. These are people who have gotten out and worked very hard and have put themselves on the line. They have spent money. They have spent time. They have put themselves up for our city council. So just like the 2 of you have, and it's important that we as voters, we have a responsibility to get out and vote, to get out and find out what the issues are, find out where the candidates stand. All of these people, all 11 of them, I guess,
11.
are well qualified and deserve our consideration, regardless of how we're going to vote. They certainly deserve our consideration, and they deserve more than 10% of the people to get out and vote.
That's right.
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Now, we only have a few seconds left. I want to mention that the Democratic Party, Knox County Democratic Party Truman Day Dinner, our annual fundraising event, is coming up a week from today. It is going to be at the Foundry starting at 6 p.m. It's the Truman Day Dinner, and we will have candidates. We will have the entire Knox County Democratic Party officers. This is your chance to come out and support the Democratic Party. We can't sell tickets on this show, but we can encourage you to call somebody at the Democratic Party and find out how do you find out more information about those tickets. That's about all I can say. But I want to thank Councilman Saunders, Mayor Brown, Administrator Chris Davis.
Thank you.
And I want to shout out to Cliff Rogers. Thank you for letting Mr. Davis be here today. Cliff is our good friend. Thank you for watching DTV.